Perfect. Welcome, 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 everyone, and welcome, Ceremony. I'm really, really looking forward to this conversation. A colleague of mine had come across your work, and she sent it my way, and she's like, I think you guys would have a very interesting conversation. And when I looked into you, I was like, absolutely, yes. As soon as I saw there's this quote on your website, and I think it's something along the lines of healing yourself first and then we can change the world, something along that line. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, she's onto it, speaking my language, we need to have a conversation. So I love, from what I've seen, the music, the yoga, everything that you have on offer is just really wholesome and beautiful. And I would love to know a little bit more about you, who you are, and how you got to where you are in your offerings. Like, how did that evolve and how did you get here? And then we'll just go from there. So welcome.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for the invitation. And yeah, I'm happy to share a bit more where I'm coming from. So my name is Ceremony. I chose the name for myself. It's not my birth name, although I really do like my birth name as well. I grew up in Switzerland and I came to New Zealand about 3.5 years ago. And I would say that I experienced for sure trauma in my childhood, and this has been a long journey for me to see through my patterns and to really heal these trauma and find ways to not only be highly functioning in society, but really to have the full quality of life for myself, I would say, and be able to really fully enjoy life. And yeah, when I came to New Zealand, I studied dance movement therapy, and that was a big step for me to reconnect with my body, because I always loved dancing, and I think it really kept me healthy and alive and resilient during my youth. And then I kind of got lost and I got quite disconnected from my body. And by going to a dance movement retreat, just reconnecting with that, I realized how powerful that is and how much I missed that. So I decided to study that over 2 years and do a diploma in dance movement therapy. And in that time, yoga came into my life as well. And I really fully immersed myself and started working in yoga. And now I manage a yoga school and we offer teacher training. So it's been a very transformational journey actually over the last 3.5 years. So it wasn't that much time as such. But yeah, it's often when you fully surrender to something and create space for it, then it just, time is not really the big factor actually, I find, but it's just how deep you can go and yeah, how willing you are to actually do the work.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy to be here today where I am and to be able to actually offer things to others. And yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, amazing. So did you find when you came across dance and then furthermore yoga, did you find that it was kind of one of those serendipitous moments where it just kind of like landed, or did you seek it out?
I think it was always there.
Yeah.
And then I just connected the dots. And I would still say that dance and yoga, they really complement each other so perfectly, because dance is very free movement and it can be very expressive, but also I find it's a form of art to guide people in dance movement explorations, because there is no, whereas in yoga, I so much appreciate yoga for having a clear system, and what I trained in and the lineage I'm connected to is a very profound, actually very simple hatha yoga system, but it really focuses on the mind. It tells you where it's going to take you. So I find it's a very scientific in that way, like you know what you're going to get at the end by just practicing it over a longer period of time. And so I think the two actually work very well together. So to express something through free movement, but also to reconnect with the body and kind of create certain experiences in the body that you can actually grasp and observe and see the progress over time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I do really love that about kind of any form of yoga or any form of movement, is that reconnection to the body and then that progress and path that you go down. And then by the end of your practice, you're like, oh, I feel completely different than 60 minutes ago. How did that even occur? So what did that look like for you in terms of healing, because a lot of what we talk about, a lot of the work that I do is geared towards finding safety in one's body again. Because when we think about trauma, we disconnect from our physical body and we can dissociate to a certain degree on that spectrum. And when we look at healing, it's about coming back into the body, but we have to create safety there first.
Yes.
So what was that like for you? What was that experience like of acknowledging trauma and saying, yes, that's a part of my story, doesn't define me, but how do I integrate it and how do I process it to heal? And what role did dance and yoga play in that aspect?
So looking back, I would say that I've probably been doing self-development on myself for over 12 years. Pretty much when I moved out from home, that whole process started, just naturally reflecting on things, realizing that certain things are actually not normal, probably not acceptable. So that whole long, endless journey started, and I find that is the most challenging thing, mostly that it feels so endless. And
Yeah.
you do big work and you see big healing, but you also realize, oh, this is never going to end. And then 2 months later, the next big thing comes up, and it can feel actually quite disheartening to be, this is ever going to end.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, there is a traditional branch in yoga called Gyan Yoga, where it's all about self-inquiry.
Mhm.
So also when I came to yoga and to the traditional form of yoga that goes way beyond the physical, I realized that I probably did Gyan Yoga and a form of yoga for the last 10 years, which is exactly sitting with your own triggers and starting to observe yourself, what we also practice in meditation, like stepping back and becoming the witness rather than so involved. So I'd really say that that was my main practice for 10 years probably, but it didn't include the body. So I was very well like able to solve my problems and to see through patterns, but as long as it didn't involve the body, it was always kind of limited, I would say.
Yeah.
So once I started including the body through dance and mainly also really through yoga, I just feel it brings that together, and it really starts to actually heal the nervous system. So I'm at the
Mhm.
moment looking a lot at the nervous system, and I'm convinced when you experience trauma, that just creates damage to the nervous system. And the more often trauma occurs, you know, the more irreversible the damage can be or can seem. So I really find that yoga is great in that, because you kind of override again and again and again these patterns and this damage, and you can really heal that. I believe you can really heal the nervous system to a certain extent and really build resilience. So
Yeah.
for me, often yoga, I practice quite slow yoga, and I don't resonate with fast yoga styles or modern yoga styles where there's no time to actually observe the mind, which I think
Mhm.
is because there is a lot going on in my body and the body is talking.
Yeah.
So I noticed that as well when I'm teaching, like people who experienced a certain amount of trauma, they really need different things from the yoga practice to people who haven't experienced that. Like they enjoy actually different practices. It's often more physical, it's often more fast. Whereas people,
Mhm.
yeah, the body's talking a lot, you need something else. You need a bit more time in general, and kind of really that safe space as well to process experiences that come up. So yeah, I would really say that yoga and dance kind of closed that circle for me of
Mhm.
healing, and really probably did that part that I can't solve just with the mind, but that really needs to be in the body as well. And
Absolutely.
seeing how you become more resilient over time is just wonderful. And to see you have the tools and you can just observe what's going on and understand and read the body better. So yeah, and
Mhm.
therapy is also all about just reading the body's messages and listening. And I guess, I mean, in yin yoga, it's very similar. You create that space to even have even more time to actually listen what the body is telling you, what memories might come up. So I had some quite profound experiences there where it was just, yeah, just highlighting it to be like, there's so much for you to discover here. Like just go deeper in yoga, go deeper, because there's so much to discover. And yeah, it's been an amazing journey and will always
Mhm.
be, I guess. Yeah.
Wow. There's so much in that. I have so many directions that I'm like, okay,
Yes.
which path do I take now? No, I think there's so much in that because it is truly about that space of working up to that resilient point where you can listen to your body. Because for some, it won't feel safe right away, and you won't want
Yeah.
to hear or be with that. So the
Yeah.
fast yoga might be that perfect thing so you can move
Yeah.
through it. But when you get to that point where you do have that inner resource to be able to slow down and listen, man, it's so profound. It's so
Yeah.
transformational. And I think that's why I am obsessed with yoga as a tool, because you can take it in so many different ways. You can do the fast paced moving flow, or you can do the very slow yin and everything in between to match
Yeah.
where you're at. And yoga meets you where you're at and then coaxes you and guides you to build
Yeah.
that resilience. So I think that's so, so beautiful. And I really love the idea around acknowledging that this is a never ending process. And I think I'd really love to get your perspective on that, because that question comes up so often. People are always like, when am I done? When have I done enough work and I'm
Yeah.
whole and healed and everything is
Yeah.
great? I'm like, oh, well, actually,
I
it
know.
doesn't
I
quite
know.
go that way. Yeah. And it's exactly what you said. It can feel so disheartening because you feel like you've made so much progress. And you're like, I've just done 10 years worth of work. How is there still more?
Yes.
How do you keep yourself in a place of inner reserve and power to keep going, to acknowledge that it's a never ending process, but to not let the disheartening moments deter you from it and take you out of it?
Yeah.
What does that look like for you?
Well, I think, I mean, it has to do with how we are brought up and with our society as well, that we have very high expectations on ourselves, I find.
Mm,
And for me, it's big about just celebrating progress in that, like, yeah, there might be still more work to do, but like focus on the progress and really like dwell in that as well and celebrate it and acknowledge it and celebrate yourself in that. And yeah, I just often realize that we don't give ourselves enough credit. We really don't, especially when we're doing deep work, and especially when we probably come from a place with,
mm,
yeah, other people's needs always are kind of more important than our own. So we just tend to do amazing things, but actually just put it to the side as soon as there's other stuff to do and just honor everything else more than that. So that's really huge for me, just to keep reminding myself, be like give credit to yourself for this year. This year was huge. Like, this is what I did. These circumstances changed. And I do, like, I think, yeah, there's so much I could say on that one as well. But what came to my mind when you asked a question was that I actually work with a Sankalpa. So like a
mm,
long-term intention in yoga. And I found this is a very practical, very profound, simple tool everyone can use, but it's so powerful. So in that relaxed state before the yoga practice, sometimes in the middle of the yoga practice, or at the end where you really connected with yourself, to actually plant that seed, like a positive statement that really gives direction to your life and that goes in the direction that you're moving with all your efforts, but also not something that creates more pressure or higher expectations, not
yeah.
something negative, like, but something like, I honor myself or I give myself credit. Like, even that would be a very powerful intention and sankalpa, probably for a long period of time, that really takes you in that direction of acknowledging what you're actually doing, of celebrating, um, yeah, and of building more self-worth. So I find this tool is amazing, and I use it pretty much in all my yoga classes, also especially during yoga nidra, like when you're in that deep relaxed state, to plant that seed that, yeah, doesn't is not pressure, it's not something you have to do, it's just a truth, it's something you invite into your life. And I found this very powerful, and because you plant that in yoga in your practice, it often comes back during the day,
Mhm.
and very powerful. It's a very powerful reminder and kind of a shortcut really to your inner self or to your higher self, to be kind of like, this is where I'm going. I'm just reminding myself I'm actually not dealing with this as I used to, because this is the direction I'm going to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I find this is a tool that is very powerful and counteracts a bit that feeling probably of, oh, this is endless and when am I done with it. And yeah, I started teaching classes also for people just who are challenged with mental health or really need to take good care of their well-being. And what just is huge, and a friend of mine told me, and it really stuck with me, was like, usually people who struggle with mental health, we have very high expectations on ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's basically why we actually struggle. And that really stuck with me. And I keep reminding people to reflect on their expectations on themselves, because often
Mm.
these are way bigger than anyone's expectations, and often the expectations that we have on ourselves are actually the ones that create blockages and a feeling of this is never ending, and of actually not celebrating progress, of being focused on the work that's still there to do. And if we can manage to let these expectations go and trust more in the process of yoga or of our spiritual practice, and just kind of trust in that process, really, like, circumstances and relationships start to change and rearrange, because we're changing on the inside. But it's not that pressure of it's never enough, like, because it always is enough, and we don't have to do the work. Like, we can also give ourselves a break, and acknowledge, be like, I'm just going to do 2 months break now, just break, that was enough. I'm just going to rest in this now, that was enough for now. So yeah, I think it's really, really important to do that, and let go of expectations is very powerful. It can be
Oh,
very freeing as well. Yeah.
absolutely. Expectations. Can we just like gone, done, no
Yeah,
more?
they're not useful, they're just not useful.
They're really not. Because really all they do is set you up for disappointment. Because if you place an expectation on someone else or yourself, whether you go beyond that expectation or come short of it, you never match it exactly. And if
Yeah.
you go beyond, you're like, oh, well, I could have done better. And you're like, well, no, wait.
Yes.
If we got rid of that and had no expectation or no attachment to an outcome,
Yeah.
that just creates so much space for possibility. Because if you're so set on one expectation, you're saying yes and it has to be that way, but you've said no to everything else that could have been. And I think
Yeah.
that's such a disservice to ourselves by saying it has to go this
Yeah.
one certain way. And I think that expectation piece is huge. And I could not agree more that it does show up so much in mental health. Like the amount of people that I work with where that's the first thing they say is,
Yeah.
I just have such high expectations and I put so much pressure on myself.
Yeah.
And then
What I,
society puts so much pressure.
yeah. What I also find is, especially when we're highly functioning and we've kind of been
Yeah.
resilient children, we experienced trauma, but we've been very resilient. That means we're highly functioning. And then even more, like, we often even match the expectations, or as you say, we exceed the expectation. We're amazing.
Yeah.
But I also know that feeling of, oh, at what price did that actually come? Like, what a
Exactly.
price did I pay? I paid with the price of my life quality, of actually enjoyment in life. Like, that's just completely out of the window because I was so focused and kind of pushing myself so hard. So
Yeah.
yeah, and that's just a good realization to have, and to be like, well, like, yeah, what is actually really important to me, and where is the nourishment, and
Yeah.
to create balance. And we often
Absolutely.
do not really talk about that in society. There is a lot of expectation. It's all about achievement. We're very goal orientated. So as you said, like, letting go of the attachment of outcome is very powerful, and
Mhm.
creates so much freedom, and actually just space for ourselves, and loving awareness, and
Yeah.
yeah, being allowed to make mistakes, being allowed to be in a process. I know, I don't remember that was one of my Sankalpas for a long time, was I allow myself to learn, I think, or to
Mhm.
make mistakes. I allow myself to be in a process. Even that, something like that. I had one of these Sankalpas for a few months, and it showed up in all my relationships. Of course, I started making mistakes, and it was like, freaked me out. I was like, I'm not going to need to change that Sankalpa. But I was like, no, I don't have to, because I know exactly that this is finally happening. And I actually made amazing new experience in that time that I would have never ever made before, because they were not perfect. Like, they were dangerous, they were risky. It
Mhm.
was like not in that way safe. It was not the plan. It
Right.
was unpredictable, but it was actually full of life and full of healing as well, and full of an experience that was really life-changing for me. And I was so glad that I used to work with that sentence, because I could see the link between the two, and be like, because I planted that and allowed myself to make new experiences, that could actually come into my life and really, yeah, bring a lot of positive change. So
I really love that you brought that up, because I think that's another really important kind of like misconception that we have when we start doing this work. It's like, okay, if I have this positive affirmation or I work with a Sankalpa, it'll just be perfect. And I'll just get to the point where, okay, I love and respect myself, if that's what I'm working with. But what we don't realize is that quite often when we work with these sankalpas or these intentions or affirmations, whatever you want to call it, we get tested on it. Like that shows up and says, okay, well, do you really mean it? And the universe kind of puts it into your face and says, okay, show me how much you love and respect yourself by having this challenge or this lesson. And that was a really big thing for me, because when I started working with these Sankalpas, I noticed that it just came right back around. I was like, this is exhausting. Like, what do I do? And then it was actually Oprah. I was listening to one of her podcasts or an episode that she had, and she kind of brought this to light in a different way. And she said, I kept working with positive affirmations and she basically says, God grant me courage. And then she worked with that and she worked with it over and over. But what she found was, as soon as she started working with that, there was so many tests that came in and said, are you actually courageous? What are you going to do in this situation? And then she's like, okay, I'll switch it. I'll say something else. God grant me patience. And then all of these things came up and tested that patience. Finally, she was like, I allow whatever needs to come up. And she got to that point where she was like, okay, yeah, I'm working with all of these and it's taught me so much and I'm grateful. And now I need to be at the point where I allow things. I allow lessons and I allow patience to show up as it does and courage to show up as it does. And it was in hearing that, the way that she worded it, it was just that moment where I was like, oh, I can take some of that pressure off. Because we always feel, especially that high functioning part of ourselves, we have to nail the lesson and we have to be like, I passed, I won, I exceeded it, whatever it is. But when we can see that lesson and say, okay, I see you for what you are, I understand that this is a moment I need to show up with patience, I'm going to do the best I can, rather than I have to like get this first round. I think that pressure piece is just so big. Hey.
And it creeps into our sankalpas. Like this is our conditioning, how we brought up in the society. And this is why I usually don't call it affirmation or really need to talk and introduce it and kind of revisit it. Like, of course, I don't ask people what their sankalpa is because it's very personal. But at the same time, you really want to make sure it's in a positive language. It's not something like, I don't do this, because then it's all you're going to focus on. And it's not going to be like these high expectations just creeping in and basically propagating a certain result, and then it results in even more pressure. So, and it just creeps in. Like, it's naturally the first couple of sankalpas, as you say, they probably really need to be revised and start observing what's happening in your life, and then be like, is this actually a good sankalpa, or is it too strong? Is it too full on? Can I, just take a smaller step? Or so I totally agree on that one. Yes.
Yeah, and it is that progress. It's like fine tuning it until you get to that actual truth. Because I think that's my thing with the word affirmation as well. It just sounds so set in stone. It's so rigid. It's so, I have a resistance with that word, but I know people resonate with it. So I want to put it out there, but I also want to bring light to the fact that Sankalpa is your inner truth. It's that inner essence that comes forward and says, this is where I want to live from, not what I want to put on myself. So I really love that we can reframe that and restructure it. And it is a process. Like some days you say something and be like, that wasn't it. And then others you're like, ooh, that one. Yeah. So what does it look like for you to find your Sankalpa? Like if somebody at home has never heard of this before and they're like, okay, what's this thing that they're talking about and how do I get one? What does that look like for you? What's that process?
I often suggest some sankalpa, like some simple sentences, like as we're talking, like I let go of expectations on myself. I allow myself to learn. I allow myself to receive or to be supported. So I always suggest a few that gives people the right idea, and it's also very connected to your feeling, I find.
Yeah.
And then I would say, like, don't use negative language, make it short and sweet. So nothing complicated, keep it simple for the mind, very simple for the body. And some people also resonate more with an image or a certain feeling than actually words.
Mm-hmm.
So that is also possible. Like if you have an image or an inner place or I don't know, a painting or anything really that represents that right maybe feeling that you want to bring into your life or nourishment, then that can totally be used as well.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I would always allow just to revisit it and refine it and adapt it.
Yeah.
And I usually work with a long-term Sankalpa, so I have one that is really more linked to a big kind of direction that I know is counteracting one of my tendencies from my upbringing, that really brings more balance into my life, that brings more peace, that brings more nourishment into my life and into my relationships. And that usually stays the same for maybe a year, maybe two, maybe even longer. And then also I often have some like little ones that I kind of add on to it, just depending on how I feel on the day or in the week, or just something that I really feel like I really want to learn this now and remind myself of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think it's very personal, and it's good to write it down as well and to reflect on it. So I would always encourage people to journal
Yeah.
once you start using it. Start, journal in regards to the Sankalpa, and also it's an awareness training really as well, right? Like starting to observe yourself, your lives, your relationships, starting to create the links and be like, wow, I'm actually powerful, and my yoga practice, my spiritual practice is very powerful. This is the outcome. It's really having an impact on my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And then celebrate it. Celebrate it when you
Yes.
notice those moments where you've stepped into it. That moment, like when you feel yourself being patient. You're like, oh, I did the thing. That's,
Yeah.
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 And it tells the nervous system, yes, this is what we're working towards. Because that's
Yes.
the thing, is it's body and mind. And then that's so important, that integrative piece of both. So I really love that. Yeah, amazing, amazing. So when you started running your yoga teacher trainings, because you do the 200 level hatha, as well as advanced modules on top of that,
Yes.
what did you find? Like, let's talk about the, I guess, yoga world as it stands today, because
Yes.
it's very different than when I stepped into it. It's very different in the Western world compared to the Eastern world. Have you found a way to bring and keep this sense of philosophy when you teach in the more Western world? Because the
Yes.
Sankalpa, the Tantra side of things, the traditional hatha, I find a lot of the time it gets watered down or diluted or whitewashed a lot of the time. And that's really hard to navigate. And the reason I ask this is because when I think back to that quote that you have on your site, is the healing of self so that we can change the world or show up in the world in a powerful way. How are you navigating yoga as it is today and keeping the essence and the truth in it? What does that look like?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I have to say I was very blessed by stepping into the role that I have now to manage the yoga school. So the yoga school already existed for a couple of years. And I came in and I started working with my friend and yoga teacher, and she's a very experienced senior lead trainer, and she's a sannyasi. So she's connected to a tradition in India, to the Bihar School of Yoga, which is part of the Satyananda tradition. So she goes back there usually every year, obviously not this year, but usually every year, to really immerse herself and keep that connection to the tradition. So I felt, and this is actually what got me really excited about yoga. Like I practiced yoga before, but it wasn't what I was looking for because it really lacked that depth. I hardly could tell the difference between yoga and Pilates, which is everything. It's like, I was like, oh, the breath is a bit different. So that was my level of experience, because I just, yeah, I was in a fitness studio. It wasn't that level of depth, that level of even, bringing some philosophy in through a Sankalpa, for example, or some mantra, or just, there was nothing of that. So it didn't really excite me, and it didn't really, yeah, I didn't feel that there was something for me to harvest there, especially. But when I met my teacher and friend, I was like, wow, if this is yoga, what she's teaching, if this is there, because she was targeting the mind straight away. There was this clarity, this simplicity, kind of cut right through the layers, set you up for meditation. Yeah, it was very powerful in that, because it was actually so profound, so simple, not entertaining. Like, her teaching style comes from the tradition, so it's not actually catering to your mind's needs at all. It's holding you firmly in that space that is uncomfortable for most people, because there is so much space and the mind just starts chatting away, and it's like, but then at the same time, once you move through the whole practice, at the end you're a different person, and you just look back and you're like, wow, what was that? Like, how did I get to this place of inner silence eventually, a little bit for a few seconds, or even just the connectedness between body and mind? So that was what really got me excited. And so started working with her, and then we kind of switched roles as well, and I started managing the whole yoga school, and then went to India with her to connect to her tradition. And obviously we draw a lot on our 200-hour training, especially we draw a lot on their wisdom, on their books, and our training is really traditional in that sense. So it is for people who are dedicated, and it is very transformational. And I think probably every yoga teacher training is that, just from the nature of actually working with your body and mind. But I really do believe, as you say, that there is many different levels of teachings. And I think it really, I mean, you only can pass on as a teacher what you embody. So I always encourage people when they just teacher training to really interview the lead trainer, to go to the classes of the trainer, and to see if that is what they're looking for, to ask really good questions about meditation, about the mind, about the role of asana in a teacher training, because you really want to get more than asana. You don't want to get stuck in that, entertaining the body and doing some more advanced postures. That's not, in my opinion, what a teacher training should be all about at all. Like, that's something that usually naturally progresses. Like, from my experience, the body just, once you build the core strength, once the body is there with a very simple asana, like Pavamuktasana series, nothing exciting at first, practice that for 2 years and the body is ready for headstand and all of the fancy stuff, and you can do core, like all the advanced asanas, basically they're just right there and accessible, and you can work towards them, which then is very encouraging. But that's actually something you can, if you have a book and you can do that in your own practice, or with a teacher, who takes you there carefully and teaches you safely. But if you do a teacher training, you really want to go deeper. You want to have a broad horizon of what yoga actually is, where it comes from. You want to have experiences of other traditional branches of yoga that are completely lost in our Western yoga world, because it's mainly, it's just no time, I find. It's mainly the physical aspects, because we live such a sedentary lifestyle. So what we need is movement, which is very healthy for us and very good. So thank God there is yoga classes that are quite physical and really get you moving. It keeps you healthy. That's great.
Yeah.
I know that, like, the guru from that tradition, so the teacher there, he is totally pro all of that. Like, he keeps reminding people, be like, yoga is a lifestyle. It's way more than a practice. You want to move into that direction. It needs to become a lifestyle. Otherwise, it's still stuck in the fitness corner. But he also says there is room for all of that. Like, thankfully, there are, easily accessible fitness yoga classes where people can connect to, where they can experience themselves, and then gives you a taste, and then you start digging deeper. So I totally embrace all of that. I think there's room for all of that, but I also think it's good to just remind people, and ideally even in physical classes, just weave in some philosophy, give them some more, give them some taster, and also respect the tradition. Like, when it comes to clothing and the whole how we sell yoga, I'm quite a bit sensitive to that as well, because I'm like, oh, it is actually a spiritual practice. Like, it really is holistic. It brings it all together. It's beautiful if we can honor that a little bit, and represent that, and just represent that there is more, even if if we're maybe digging on the surface, so just catering to people's needs. Really, it's just catered to people's needs, and there's nothing wrong about that. But it's beautiful if we can let people know there is so much more. If you want to go a bit deeper, there is so much more. So I think that's actually why I'm really excited to also, I started also teaching on the 200-hour teacher training. And this is why I really love teaching teacher trainings, because in general, the students you get, they are dedicated, and they really are willing to go deeper. And so they're willing to be a bit uncomfortable. They're willing to have some days where they're just, feeling like a mess and have a lot to process. And just because they're willing to do that kind of work as well. And that is what really gets me excited. And often you just have drop-in classes. It's just, you can't really touch on these levels.
Yeah.
And yeah, I am so excited about this depth, and then it comes back to self-development, right? I'm so excited about that, but that really needs a certain commitment. I think commitment is the biggest part, and often, you know, people, there's online resources, great online resources, then there's some studios, so it's different teachers, it's different practices, different styles, even it's all a bit mixed. And yeah, I would really speak up for the value of working with one teacher, that you really feel that this person has something spiritually as well to give you.
Mm.
The same person over a longer period of time to
Yeah.
really get what they're actually doing and where it's going to take you. Otherwise, you might have certain experiences, but actually it's hard to link them back and to know, why do I have this effect now? Is this good? Is this bad? What do I do with it?
Yeah.
Because you're actually not really practicing a yogic system that is designed to be holistic and to take you somewhere, but you're actually mixing it all up. So it's sometimes hard to really pin it down and be like, well, this is because of this practice, and if you would just keep doing that for 3 months, that would be the outcome.
Mm.
So yeah. But I
Oh,
do like to actually kind of maybe close that hole, because it's a big topic, right? It's
yeah.
really a big topic, and I find myself constantly in that tension, to be honest, like managing the yoga school, deciding which retreats we're going to bring on, which teacher trainings we actually offer in the advanced modules, what should be the content of these modules, and what are people looking for, um, and what do I actually feel that we should be offering. So it is really a field of constant tension, and also with my lead trainers constantly having these conversations, basically being like, can we water it down? Do we have to water it down a little bit so it's more accessible for people, or do we decide against it because it just doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel true? Or do we lose the authenticity of yoga then? Do we just, so it is a big field
Mm.
of tension, definitely.
Absolutely. But I really value and appreciate the fact that you can keep your sense of self and sense of respect for the tradition within that. Because I think what I hear in all of this is it is absolutely a lifestyle. So, with it being a lifestyle, the way that you just articulated all of this is very much you're living into that. You're living into your
Yeah,
practice of yoga,
yeah,
because you are in that space of like tension, like you say, the back and the forth and the yin and the yang of all of it, and the deciding of, do I go with what people are asking for, or do I stay true to this tradition, to this philosophy? Do I ask people to come this way rather than me meeting them where they want me to meet them? And I think
yes,
that's so important, because you're keeping your sense of self,
yeah,
that piece of integrity to it. And it is saying, actually, no, this is where it comes from. The more that we keep meeting people where they're at, the further away we get from the actual philosophy, the depth, the transformation of yoga. And the
yeah,
closer we get to that more fitness way, which, exactly like you said, there's room for all of it, but it's being
yes,
true to who you are as a teacher. And I think
yeah,
that's so powerful to know that there is space to stay grounded in it. There is room to say, no, actually, this is a spiritual practice. It is a mentally shifting and evolving practice. Yes, body, but we have 5 levels and layers of our body. There's spiritual, mental, emotional, energetic, and did I say mental? Emotional?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
did I say all of them? Yeah, all of those 5. There's all of
yes,
these levels and layers that we have to work with. And that's, I think that's, again, it just speaks so powerfully to the fact that yoga is this lifestyle, this practice that constantly meets you where you're at, but she
yes,
also invites you deeper. She's like, yeah,
yeah,
okay, I'm here, but like, let's go here as well. And to be able to facilitate that space is just so phenomenal, because I think that's where the healing aspect can really come in.
yeah,
Like, I've had so many people come on a training and be like, this isn't a yoga training. This is like life school. I get so much more than just yoga. I wasn't expecting
yeah,
that. And I'm like, yeah,
yes,
because yoga is everything. It's how we
yeah,
show up in the world. So to be able
yeah,
to facilitate that is just something so incredible. And I would love to hear your thoughts on the idea around, also, what I want to say is I really loved what you said. I don't know, I can't remember how you worded it, but when you said to teach something or to offer something, you have to be embodied. I could not agree more. And I think that's really, really important, because when we look at that, there's so many things out there that it's become commoditized, and people are like, well, I know I can make money off this, so I'll just do the thing. But to be embodied and to live this lifestyle and then to impart it, like, that's the juice of it. And I really love that. So what does your personal practice look like to stay embodied, to continuously show up in your own work and then meet people where they're at? Because with yoga, we know that it asks you to shed your layers. It asks you to be real with yourself and like your truest, deepest self, not the superficial self,
Yeah.
but your traumas, your stories, your patterns, your beliefs, like all of that has the potential to come to the surface. So how do you stay true and real with your own history, your own stories, and then meet others where they're at? What does that look like? Because that can be really tough.
Yes. I think the more I reflect on all these questions and tensions and experiences, the more I become vocal about it. So I think the core of my yoga practice is really self-development. I would say that. And
Yeah.
there's not only the classical yoga practice in my life, I also use music. I resonate a lot with mantra chanting and singing and chanting in general. And that is also a traditional branch of yoga, and bhakti. So I resonate a lot with other very traditional branches of yoga, where it's also really about the emotional world, about, as you say, there's room for everything. Like, yoga is a lifestyle, and I'd say I didn't put any boundaries on that. Like, I just allow it to unfold and naturally take me from one. Started actually for me a lot with diet as well. And really, I really believe, like, this is huge. Like, it doesn't make sense if we purify the body through all these asana and then we shove all these things into our body 3 times a day, 5 times a day, so it was really huge. And I would actually love to see more people speaking about diet as well, because it's so huge. And for me, probably that was just as big on my spiritual path, actually, as the practice of yoga, actually changing my diet and not putting suffering into my body anymore, and not consuming foods that I really believe I shouldn't be consuming. So that was huge. So
Yeah.
I think it's for me, it's embracing all of that, and allowing yoga, this awareness, to come into all areas of my life and not restricting it, and being really vocal about it. So I think for me, what I really bridge, and even to the question that you asked before, like, often it's little things actually that can open all these doors for people to go deeper. Like, I can do a 45 minutes strong asana practice, but if I will allow like 15 minutes at the end for really breathing, proper breathing technique and a meditation, that can open a door for someone to really go deeper and tap into that. So often it's like little decisions actually to make it accessible for people, or even like verbalizing it. I would say, like, today we're not doing meditation. This is not meditation. This is just a deep relaxation, and it's totally fine, because we really need this in our society. We're so stressed out. I'm going to sing a song for you while you're in Shavasana, and this is deep relaxation. So, but even that, like, prompts people to be like, true, I never thought what actually is the meditation. We just call it meditation, but that's actually quite different. And why is it maybe not, or then I would say, like, oh, meditation is actually several steps that we're going to take. And this technique just teaches us the first one, and it's actually more about keeping the body still or developing that. So I became quite good, I think, this year also in my classes, for people actually who really take proper care of their well-being through yoga, and to weave in all these little, it's like jewels, giving people jewels, like giving them some little thoughts that actually can become big. You never know. Someone to have a realization, be like, that's true, that's a difference, or I never thought about that, but that can actually, oh yeah. So I really started weaving that in, and I find that people are very open to that and very hungry actually for it. So I think if we as teachers are doing that work and never get tired of exploring more, and not limit yoga to our job, like, it shouldn't be like that. It is a lifestyle. So if we don't limit it, and also it's not designed to be that, and you can put it in a box. It actually is designed to be a lifelong journey, which then comes back to the beginning of being like, don't be disheartened. It is designed to be a lifelong journey. So don't push to do the advanced asana, because what are you going to do after? Like, this
Yeah,
is
exactly.
a lifelong journey. So if you can do them with 60, that's awesome, isn't it? So why not, you know? So yeah, I really think this is all these little big things with big impacts for people, to just be more vocal about it and start
Yeah.
talking about it and keep reminding people this is a lifelong practice. Don't worry about it if it's not accessible to you right now. You know, be truthful, do the modification if it doesn't feel right. I mean, all these things, they're huge, and it can just easily take 3 years working with a teacher to have that level of self-awareness and allowing to listen to the body and choose a modification and not push yourself and not injure yourself. And this is all huge, and it just takes so much time to really
Mm.
develop that. So I think being vocal about it, I find very powerful also for me as a
Right.
teacher, to see people are hungry for it. It's just they're sometimes not, they don't know what they're actually looking for. So
Yeah.
if we can voice it, if we can tell them that there is more, if we can make suggestions, that's much needed.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's a lot in what you say around vocalizing your own practice, because you couldn't speak to any of these things had you not
Yes,
experienced them yourself. So you have to be in that constant self practice to then
yes,
be able to vocalize it and offer it to others. And that's
totally.
where I think it's so important as a yoga teacher, a facilitator, we have to be in the work, we have to be in our own practice, or else like we have nothing to offer. We're like, oh, I'm still offering what I did 5 years ago. And it's like,
Yes,
no, how are you progressing and how are you bringing people into that realm and that sphere? And I also think that's such a important place to really like lean into, in the sense of our society is so geared to instant gratification. We're like, no, by the end of this 60-minute class, I want to be able to do a handstand into chaturanga. And you're like, well, and what else are you doing the
yes,
other 365 days of the year to actually get there? Like, how are you working towards longevity and an actual life practice rather than forcing things to happen right now? Because you had mentioned staying with one teacher for a prolonged amount of time. That's so rare to come by now. I know so
yes,
few people who have a dedicated like mentor, essentially. Like when we think of the lineage of yoga, you couldn't go off and teach until your master, your guru, had said,
yeah,
okay, you're now ready. Go
yeah,
forth and offer this. Whereas now you literally just have to rock up to a 200-hour training and you can go and teach. So it's
yes,
like, but what are you doing to continue to learn? Who are you turning to in the hard moments as well as the
yeah,
celebratory moments?
yeah,
And I think that longevity piece is so, so important, and it is a process. So I would, yeah, like I would just say, like, who's your person or your people? Who are your people that you go to
yeah,
continually learn from and with? And I think
yes,
that's, if we can get out of that instant gratification and wanting it right here and now and say, yeah, there's something on offer here and I need to continue with this, that's
yeah.
just so powerful. So, so powerful. Ceremony, I could talk to you for days.
I
I,
feel the same. We could go on for another 2 hours.
right? I'm like, everyone just sit down, grab your popcorn. We are going for it because there is so much in this. I want to respect your time. So I'll ask you my last question because I have a feeling we'll talk about this one as well. But like, let's do several more of these because there's so much goodness here. So my last question for you is around it, so you can take this anywhere. It doesn't have to do with anything we've talked about thus far. Think about either locally or think globally. If there was one change you could make or one big norm that you could disrupt, what would it be and why?
Thank you for the question. That's wonderful.
It's my favorite
um,
one. I
yeah, it's
love
great.
this.
So it would be um, what I put it in this one sentence, that is, men and women are equal but different.
Mm,
And for me, that is huge and ripples through whole of society.
yeah.
So we've seen a wave of feminism, thankfully, like giving us a lot more equality in certain areas and giving us more space and more rights and all of that. And that was so much needed. But I also see that we women, we suffer from functioning in a very manly world. So we are now at the point, we do the same jobs often, more often than ever before probably, which is great. But we are not in a position to honor ourselves and our feminine bodies. So what I observe, and part of the work that I'm very passionate about and that I hope to grow into more in the future, is really working with women and doing women's circle. And I call this movement the new feminine. And it is basically, we're starting a lot with talking about the menstrual cycle and what that means, because the wisdom of nature in our body is just huge. So it's not just about the hormones and when we're bleeding, but it's about all of that wisdom, deep, profound wisdom that's in there, like going through a cycle. We're not the same person throughout the month. And that's different to men. That's so different. So if we push ourselves to do the same jobs as men do, and we push ourselves to do them in the same way as men, which is just more linear, right? Like there's not that much change throughout the month. It's more stable. It's just more linear. We have to reject and suppress so many parts, like very deep parts of ourselves. And I can see that so many women, we suffer from this. Like we suffer, and it creates disease, it creates menstrual pain, it creates PMS, it creates all these symptoms, because we actually not having the opportunity and taking the time to really be connected and live in accordance to our body. So that is a big part where I'm very passionate about that, creating that awareness first for ourselves, and then finding ways to bring that into society, to bring that into our jobs, into our relationships, by becoming vocal about it. Be like, I am in a female body. Like, actually, it doesn't even matter with what I identify. It's just, as long as I'm in this female body, this is what my body does, and this is how it makes me feel. And this is how, throughout the month I have this creative phase, like where I can create anything and I'm invincible. So then give me a project to handle, let me do all the 5 presentations in the same week, not a problem. But then there's this other week where I need to retreat, and where give me something to reflect on, give me everything that's not perfectly working in the company, and I'm going to come up with probably 3 solutions that are big after this 1 week sitting with everything, being just by myself and with the problem, because I'm very sensitive to anything that's not working right now. And I will, see right through and come up with good solutions. So I would so much love to see this, of course, really on a global scale, on a bigger scale, that we now can kind of come back in a way and be like, okay, now we have a certain equality, which is awesome and much needed, but now we need to honor and create space. How can we do this, the same things, amazing things, but in a feminine way? What does it mean if women do this management job? Like, how does this need to be adapted? And I mean, I'm convinced nothing gets lost if we do this. On the contrary, like, women would be more empowered, everything will flourish more, and also men would be, also needed actually in their stability. Like it comes beautifully together. And if we work together and both can actually honor what's going on in our bodies and what's going on in our nature, that just can be so powerful. And this is something I'm really passionate about. And it's all about reconnecting with the body as well, right? It's not being disconnected and just functioning, but listening and being vocal about it, and creating a space for ourselves.
It's yes, just yes. I'm like that.
Thank you for that question. It's a great one.
Oh my gosh, because I love the way that you can distill that into the simple fact that we are equal yet different. That just is. And it's anatomical, it's physiological, regardless of identity, absolutely. It's on that anatomy base, the hormones that fluctuate, all of these changes that occur. And we're not taught this stuff, which blows my mind. Why don't we talk about who we are in the different phases? Like, because we're not the same person through the phases of our cycle.
And I mean, I see it coming back. So I facilitate women's circle, and I'm not the only one. There's many women's circle now out there, and a couple of years ago they weren't. So I see that, like, I'm passionate about it. I see there's so much hope, and yoga is big in that, I believe, because we start reconnecting with our bodies. So, as you say, it's just the nature of yoga to prompt you deeper in one direction that you probably should go, because it will be so much for you to actually integrate. So it's popping up, it's coming back, you know, women going off hormonal contraception. This is a thing now.
Yeah.
Like, it's great. I mean, we talk about it now. We realize the difference. Like, I speak from experience. All of these little big changes, the moon cup, things like that, even
Oh,
being confident now that we talk about these things, and the feedback I get from men is amazing. They're like, we have no idea, like they suffer from the same thing that nobody talks about it. So if I meet someone and we can actually talk about menstruation, I'm like, this is great. And I'm not coming from a victim perspective, or, you know, I need to let everyone know I'm bleeding now. No, not at all. This can be very done in a very sweet way, but just being soft about it, being
yeah.
authentic, being like, hey, this is this time of a month where I'm a bit more sensitive. Like, this is not a good time to talk about this. This is not the time I'm going to go to a party, you know. And men really appreciate that, I find, because they just experience us. Often we're a mystery because we don't know ourselves, so we can't help them. We can't tell them what's going on. Both sides suffer from it. So I really see that, like, and I love the support that we also get from men. Like, in my people I know, they're all about the women's circle. Like, do this, please. Like, this sounds great, but also, can we come? That's always the second question. It's like, oh, and then they kind of challenge me, like, can I come? And I'm like, no, I'm really sorry. Like, this is really, we need this space first for ourselves, but I can kind of, maybe we can do something together, or I'm happy to report to you guys what we actually discussed and what kind of the outcome was, because I know there's so much for you to learn. But we need to create that space for ourselves again, and to be kind of safe and to learn about ourselves, because it's just it got lost over the last, I don't know, decades, probably, especially. So yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm so excited to see what's down the pipeline for you and what you're going to continue to create, because there's so
Thank
much
you.
goodness in this. And I love that you are taking this holistic approach, that it's body, it's mind, it's spirit, it's everything in between. It's men, it's women, it's outside of that, it's other, it's
Yeah.
everything. And I just love that you're vocal in that space of advocacy and speaking for those who aren't yet comfortable speaking to it, because it gives permission to others. And I just commend you for everything that you're up to, and I absolutely love it. And you have no idea how much I appreciate your time, and I appreciate this conversation, and I can't wait to do it again. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much,
much.
Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you. It was a real pleasure. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed just sharing some of my ideas, and it's
absolutely.
lovely to be, challenged by really good questions. So thank you for
Awesome.
that.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.